Most women think men approach the woman they find most attractive. That is not true. Men notice beauty first, certainly. They are not conducting a philosophical inquiry from across the room. But beauty alone does not decide whether he walks over, risks rejection, and exposes himself to a stranger's judgment. In fact, the woman who catches his eye most intensely is often the woman he does not approach. Because before a man approaches, he is not only evaluating you, he is evaluating what approaching you might do to him. Will she embarrass me? Will she dismiss me? Will she make me feel small? Is she receptive? Or am I about to become a story she tells her friends later? Is she available? Is she intimidating? Does she look like she wants to be bothered? And perhaps most importantly, if she rejects me, can I recover my pride quickly enough to pretend I never cared? That is the hidden theater occurring in his mind before he ever says hello. By the end of this video, you will understand what men actually notice in those first moments. Why some women receive attention, but not action. Why a woman's emotional energy can be more influential than her beauty. And why the men who approach most confidently are not always the men who are most interested. Sometimes they are simply the men with the least to lose. A man's decision to approach begins with attraction, but attraction is only the invitation. The real decision is governed by risk. Men are taught to make the first move, but what this really means is that they are repeatedly placed in situations where they must voluntarily risk social humiliation. And men are more sensitive to humiliation than they admit. A man can lose money and tell himself he will earn it back. He can lose an argument and revise the story in his favor. But rejection, particularly public rejection, strikes at something more primitive. It threatens his sense of desirability. And a man's sense of desirability is often held together with the architectural integrity of a wet napkin. So when he notices a woman, he is scanning for more than physical attraction. He is looking for signs of possibility, not certainty. Men rarely get certainty, but possibility. He watches your face first, not simply whether you are smiling, but the quality of your expression. Are you closed off? Are you tense? Are you scanning the room like everyone has failed an audition you never asked them to attend? Or do you appear present, comfortable, and open to the environment around you? A woman's expression tells a man whether she feels psychologically accessible. This has nothing to do with being overly friendly or performing warmth for strangers. In fact, trying too hard to appear inviting can create a different problem. It can make a woman seem as though she is waiting to be chosen. And men can feel that. People are far more perceptive about neediness than they are honest about it. The most compelling energy is not, "Please come talk to me." It is, "I am enjoying myself. You may be interesting enough to join me." That difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Now this is where most people misunderstand the psychology. Women often assume that a man avoids approaching because he is not attracted enough. But frequently, the opposite is true. The woman he finds most attractive may activate his insecurity most intensely. She represents a higher perceived risk. He imagines she has more options, higher standards, more social power, and greater ability to reject him in a way that wounds his ego. So he does what people do when they desire something that threatens their self-image. He rationalizes. She probably has a boyfriend. She looks high maintenance. She seems stuck up. She probably wouldn't be interested anyway. Notice what is happening here. He transforms his fear into an opinion about you. This allows him to avoid the risk while maintaining his pride. He has not failed to approach. He has simply decided that you were not worth approaching. The ego is a gifted defense attorney. It can create a convincing argument for almost any retreat. This is why you should be cautious about taking a man's lack of action as a clear measure of your appeal. Men do not always avoid what they dislike. Often, they avoid what has the power to expose them. But there is another side to this. A woman can be beautiful, poised, and clearly attractive, yet still signal that she is not emotionally safe to approach. Men notice how she treats the people around her. They notice whether she appears contemptuous, whether she speaks with casual cruelty, whether she seems to require an audience, whether every interaction revolves around proving she is above someone else. A man may be drawn to that woman. He may even approach her if his appetite for chaos exceeds his instinct for self-preservation. This happens more often than civilization would prefer. But he will not necessarily see her as a woman he can relax around. Men notice emotional temperature quickly. They may not articulate it well. They may call it vibes, which is the linguistic equivalent of throwing a blanket over a complicated machine and claiming you understand engineering. But beneath that vague word, they are detecting something real. Does this woman seem calm, guarded, volatile, receptive, judgmental, playful, self-possessed? Your mood becomes part of the equation, because a man assumes, often correctly, that the mood you project publicly is a preview of what access to you may cost privately. What happens next is where it becomes dangerous. Some women mistake intimidation for power. They believe that if men seem nervous around them, avoid eye contact, or hesitate to approach, this must mean they are exceptionally desirable. Sometimes it does, but intimidation can produce two very different responses. It can make a secure, socially capable man more deliberate. He may observe longer, choose his moment carefully, and approach with more purpose because he sees substance and does not want to mishandle the interaction. But it can also repel men who are capable of interest, yet unwilling to volunteer for an emotional obstacle course. A man does not need a woman to be easy. He needs her to appear possible. There is a difference between standards and hostility. Standards say, not everyone gets access. Hostility says, everyone is guilty until proven useful. One creates curiosity. The other makes people conserve their energy. And the man who approaches anyway despite obvious hostility is not always brave. He may simply be accustomed to mistaking resistance for value. Some men are addicted to the chase because the chase lets them avoid the far more difficult task of sustaining intimacy. Pursuit is exciting. Being known is another matter entirely. Before he approaches, a man also notices your social position. Are you alone, with one friend, in a group, speaking to someone, on your phone, moving quickly, or surrounded by people who appear protective of your space? This is practical, but it is also psychological. Approaching a woman who is alone can feel less socially risky. Approaching a woman in a tight group can feel like walking into a courtroom where every person has already been assigned a role in his public execution. Her friends may be perfectly pleasant, but he does not know that. He sees witnesses. He sees judges. He sees the potential for one awkward sentence to become a group event. A man who truly wants to approach may still do it, but he calculates the cost. This is also why women often receive more approaches when they briefly separate from their group, walk to the bar, wait outside, or simply create a moment of space. It is not that the men suddenly discovered them. They noticed them earlier. The environment simply stopped making the interaction feel like a performance. Research supports how quickly these judgments happen. In a well-known study by psychologists Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov at Princeton, participants formed impressions of unfamiliar faces after exposures as brief as 1/10 of a second. More time did not radically change the initial judgments. It mostly increased confidence in them. That is important. Before a man has spoken to you, he has already formed a rough story. He may be wrong. Often, he is wrong. But he does not need to be accurate for the story to influence his behavior. He only needs to believe it long enough to either approach or walk away. This is why presence matters. Not in the shallow sense of constantly managing your appearance, but in the deeper sense of understanding that people read the signals you give before they understand your character. Your posture tells him whether you are comfortable occupying space. Your eye contact tells him whether you are alert or unavailable. Your voice, even from a distance, tells him whether you are grounded or performing. The way you react to your friends tells him whether closeness with you appears rewarding or exhausting. Men notice whether a woman seems to need attention, but they also notice whether she can receive attention without becoming rattled by it. That is rare. A woman who is desperate for attention often gives too much too quickly. A woman terrified of attention rejects it before it reaches her. But a woman with emotional control can receive interest without surrendering her center. She can smile without promising access. She can be warm without being available to everyone. She can be selective without creating a spectacle of her selectiveness. That is what makes a man curious. Not perfection, not coldness, not a manufactured mystery assembled from delayed replies and vague Instagram captions. Composure. Because composure suggests that there is something beneath the surface worth discovering. If you are trying to decode whether men approach you, avoid you, become inconsistent, or seem interested but never act, one-on-one coaching is available through the link in the description. Monthly and yearly coaching are available as well for women who want ongoing support in reading behavior accurately, identifying hidden relationship patterns, and understanding where their emotional leverage actually is. After ordering, make sure you check your spam or promotions folder, because important emails occasionally get sent there. Even technology enjoys withholding what you paid for. And subscribe to the newsletter for discounts and updates. Now this is where most people misunderstand the psychology one final time. The man who approaches you is not necessarily the man who sees you most clearly. Confidence can be an advantage, but it can also be a disguise. Some men approach easily because they are socially skilled and genuinely interested. Others approach easily because rejection barely touches them. They have detached their ego from the outcome, or they have learned to treat women as interchangeable opportunities. They are not brave. They are simply not invested. Meanwhile, the man who hesitates may be thoughtful, intimidated, unavailable, insecure, or merely indecisive. His hesitation alone does not reveal his character. What reveals his character is what happens after contact is made. Does he become more curious about you, or does he immediately turn the interaction into a transaction? Does he listen, remember details, and reveal himself gradually? Or does he use charm as a shortcut around genuine connection? Does he respect your pace? Does his interest remain stable when he realizes you have standards, opinions, and a life that will not reorganize itself around his attention? The approach is not the verdict. It is the opening move. And too many women give enormous meaning to the opening move because it is visible. But the more revealing part happens afterward, when the man no longer has the thrill of pursuit to carry him. A man notices your appearance before he approaches. He notices your availability, your expression, your social context, your warmth, your confidence, and the perceived cost of rejection. But over time, he notices something far more consequential. He notices whether you are ruled by your need to be liked. The woman who needs to be liked becomes easy to manipulate. A little approval can buy her silence. A little withdrawal can make her chase. A little uncertainty can make her over-explain, overgive, and abandon her own standards in exchange for temporary reassurance. But the woman who can tolerate not being chosen is difficult to control. She may want connection. She may enjoy attention. She may be open, affectionate, and deeply feminine. But she does not hand a stranger the authority to determine her worth, simply because he had the nerve to walk across a room. That is the psychology men notice eventually. And once they notice it, the serious ones become more careful with you. If you found this useful, subscribe to the channel and like the video. And tell me in the comments, what do you think men notice first? Beauty, warmth, confidence, or the possibility of rejection? And have you ever seen a man act less confident around the woman he seemed most drawn to? For a deeper understanding of attraction, standards, power, emotional leverage, and the patterns that make people reveal themselves, order The Feminine Game through the link in the description. After purchasing, check your spam or promotions folder for your access information. And visit the new channel, X-Pimp Explains Men Masterclass, where new 50-minute videos are uploaded weekly.